years, audiences saw Chris Hemsworth as the embodiment of confidence, a man who looked unshakable on screen and effortless in interviews. What almost no one realized at the time was that the confidence people admired was something he was still building. When Hemsworth first became Thor, he wasn't stepping into the role from a place of certainty. He was stepping into it while quietly managing intense anxiety and learning, in real time, how to appear calm before he actually felt it. And that detail matters now more than ever because Thor wasn't just a breakout role. According to Hemsworth himself, it became a safety net, one that shaped not only his career, but the public version of who he was allowed to be. Chris Hemsworth was 27 years old when he landed Thor, an age where many actors are still fighting for stability, not headlining billion-dollar franchises. In a recent interview with The Guardian, Hemsworth reflected on that period with a level of honesty that stands out in Hollywood conversations. He explained that before Thor, confidence wasn't something he naturally carried. Publicly available interviews and his own words suggest he was dealing with performance anxiety and panic attacks, experiences that rarely align with the image of a superhero-led. What's important here is how he describes that phase, not as a dramatic breaking point, not as something he overcame overnight, but as something he managed, quietly, while learning what the industry expected him to project. Hemsworth admitted that the version of himself people saw in interviews wasn't fake, but it also wasn't fully organic. It was constructed. A calibrated presentation designed to meet expectations. It's me, but it's a creation too, he told The Guardian. It's what I thought people wanted to see. That line reframes years of public appearances, not as effortless charm, but as practiced stability. And this is where Thor stops being just a character and starts functioning as armor. Thor didn't just require a different accent or posture. It demanded a complete physical transformation. Hemsworth has spoken openly about the training process, the hours in the gym, the muscle gain, the discipline required to maintain the physique of a god. On the surface, that reads like a standard Marvel preparation story. But his own interpretation adds a deeper layer. As his body changed, so did the way he occupied space. His posture shifted, his voice lowered, his movements became more deliberate. According to Hemsworth, these physical adjustments began feeding back into his mindset, not in a dramatic or cinematic way, but gradually. He described reaching a moment where he thought, okay, cool. No one can mess with me. Not because the anxiety vanished, but because the external presentation created distance from it. This is a subtle but crucial distinction. Thor didn't erase fear. Thor covered it long enough for confidence to grow underneath. That's why Hemsworth later described the role as a safety net. It allowed him to function convincingly while still finding his footing internally. But the longer a safety net exists, the harder it becomes to step away from it. Hemsworth has now portrayed Thor in 8 Marvel films, spanning more than a decade. That kind of continuity is rare, even in blockbuster franchises. From Thor 2011 to Thor: Love and Thunder 2022, the character evolved from mythic warrior to self-aware hero, to comedic lead, to reflective father figure. And with each iteration, Hemsworth evolved alongside him. What's often overlooked is how deeply intertwined that evolution became with Hemsworth's public identity. For many viewers, Thor wasn't a role he played, it was who he was. And when an actor's internal confidence is still developing, that kind of external reinforcement can be stabilizing and limiting at the same time. Hemsworth has never framed Thor as a trap, but his language suggests awareness that the role insulated him, emotionally and professionally. It gave him permission to feel strong before he fully believed it, which makes Thor's return in Avengers: Doomsday feel less like nostalgia and more like a mirror. Marvel recently released a teaser for Avengers: Doomsday, scheduled to debut in theaters on December 18. Publicly available footage shows a noticeably different tone, especially in Thor's dialogue. In the teaser, Thor is no longer speaking from certainty, he's speaking from responsibility. Addressing his father Odin in prayer, he reflects on duty, war, and something he never expected: fatherhood. All my life, I have answered every call to honor, duty, to war. But now fate has given me something I never sought. The language is restrained, reflective, almost hesitant. And that's where Hemsworth's real-life comments quietly echo through the character. Thor is no longer performing strength. He's questioning how to carry it. And that raises a question Marvel isn't answering directly, but the performance itself might. By the time Chris Hemsworth reached his late 30s, Thor was no longer new. The armor was familiar, the confidence well-rehearsed. And that's often the moment when long-running roles quietly change function. What once protected you starts revealing what's underneath. Hemsworth's comments to The Guardian don't suggest regret. They suggest awareness. When he says Thor fooled people into thinking I was confident, he isn't dismissing the character. He's acknowledging the distance between appearance and reality that existed early on. That distance mattered because Hollywood doesn't reward uncertainty. It rewards stability, reliability, the ability to walk into a press junket, a premiere, or a live interview and appear grounded. Thor gave him that footing. But over time, the industry stopped seeing Thor as a role Hemsworth played and started seeing Hemsworth as Thor himself. That subtle shift changes expectations, and expectations are often where anxiety quietly returns. One of the most revealing parts of Hemsworth's interview isn't about panic or fear, it's about performance. He describes confidence as something he presented before he fully possessed it. This aligns with a broader, well-documented phenomenon in creative industries. Confidence is often learned publicly, not privately. Hemsworth didn't wait to feel ready. He learned readiness by repetition. Training his body wasn't just preparation for action scenes. It was a daily ritual that reinforced discipline, control, and presence. Deepening his voice wasn't just a cinematic choice. It became a signal to audiences and to himself. Posture, tone, physicality, these weren't cosmetic changes. They were tools. And tools, when used long enough, shape the person holding them. By the time Thor reached later films, Hemsworth wasn't hiding behind the character anymore. The traits had integrated. That's the difference between borrowed confidence and earned confidence. Which makes one thing clear: Thor didn't define Hemsworth, but he trained him. Thor, Love and Thunder marked a turning point, both critically and tonally. The film leaned heavily into self-awareness, humor, and emotional vulnerability, and reactions were mixed. Some audiences embraced the lighter tone. Others felt the character had drifted too far from his mythic core. What matters here isn't the debate, it's what came next. After Love and Thunder, Hemsworth became noticeably more selective in how he spoke about Thor. Not defensive, not dismissive, measured. Public interviews suggest he became more reflective about the balance between humor and gravity, and about how long a character can evolve without losing its center. This wasn't a man clinging to a role. It was someone reassessing what the role still gave him. And that reassessment lines up with the quiet tone of Avengers, Doomsday. In the Avengers, Doomsday teaser, Thor speaks not as a conqueror, but as a protector. His prayer to Odin isn't about victory, it's about return. Defeat one more enemy, and return home to her. This is a notable shift. Thor's strength is no longer framed by battle, but by restraint, by the desire to be present. That mirrors something Hemsworth has spoken about outside the Marvel universe as well. Prioritizing family, stepping back, reassessing pace. While it would be irresponsible to draw direct psychological conclusions, the thematic alignment is hard to ignore. The character is asking for stillness. The actor has spoken about seeking balance. This isn't coincidence, it's convergence. Which leads to the most interesting question of all. Thor's upcoming appearance marks his 9th Marvel film. At this point, financial motivation alone doesn't fully explain the return, nor does contractual obligation based on publicly available information. So why come back? One possible interpretation, grounded in pattern rather than speculation, is that Thor remains a familiar emotional space, not a crutch, a reference point. A character that once helped Hemsworth learn confidence now allows him to explore what comes after confidence: responsibility, legacy, kare. The safety net didn't disappear, it transformed. And that transformation sets up the most important unresolved question, one Marvel hasn't answered yet. There's a quiet confidence that arrives only after years of performance. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that no longer needs to explain itself. Chris Hemsworth's reflections suggest he has crossed that threshold. Early in his career, Thor offered structure, a role with clear boundaries, clear expectations, clear power. It allowed him to function while confidence was still forming. But now, the dynamic appears reversed. Thor no longer exists to shield Hemsworth. Instead, Hemsworth seems to be lending the character something deeper: restraint, reflection, and emotional weight. The strength is still there, but it's no longer the point. And that shift changes how we should interpret Thor's return. When Hemsworth called Thor a safety net, he wasn't diminishing the role. He was naming its function at a specific moment in time. Safety nets aren't meant to be permanent. They're meant to catch you until balance develops. What makes Avengers, Doomsday intriguing is not the spectacle, but the tone. Thor is no longer proving himself to the world. He's deciding what kind of presence he wants to be. A warrior who can walk away, a father who chooses stillness, a god who understands limits. That's not a regression, it's evolution. But evolution always comes with a cost. Here's the question this video deliberately leaves open. If Thor was the role that helped Chris Hemsworth learn confidence, what happens when he no longer needs that lesson? Does Thor continue as a space for reflection, or does the character eventually outlive its purpose for the actor who grew up inside it? Marvel hasn't answered that. Hemsworth hasn't answered that. And maybe that uncertainty is exactly why this return feels different. If you're interested in how long-running roles quietly shape the people who inhabit them, and how public confidence often hides a more gradual internal process, there's more to explore here. The next video looks at what happens after an iconic role stops protecting an actor and starts asking something back. Because sometimes, the hardest role to play is the one you no longer need, but aren't quite ready to leave.